is Christine Bradley. I know most of you, I think. If you don't know me, ask the person who's sitting next to me. Oh, that's right.
There,
See
right?
ya. So we're trying something new tonight that may or may not work. I had about 10 people ask me if we would be putting this on Zoom, and I was like, no, but we can record it. So we're recording it on the iPad, and we'll see how it works out. It's the first time we've tried it, so, you know, may be great, or it may just be but anyway, welcome. The program tonight, as you can see here, is Jewish Merchants of Clear Creek County. I don't expect you all to be able to read the text here, but I wanted to give you a general idea of some of the ads that were here and some of the stores that were here, and then we'll talk about it in more depth as we go along. You can see over to the left, Hurrah, 4th of July. That's Louis Cohen. And the ad I like because if you're over here, it's signed, yours truly, Louis Cohen. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody sign an ad before, and I really want to know if he had 500 dozen shirts. I can't quite believe it. Up top, the tremendous sacrifice is Sam Strauss with a store that he had in Leadville, and he was closing it out at that point. To the right, Morris Tischler. You gotta like Morris Tischler. I'm going to talk about him a little more later. He was president of the 40 Liars Club. He was a tailor, and then when he came back, he opened up another store. But I'll give you a little more about Morris as we go along. And D.L. Roshkowski. There are Roshkowskis everywhere. This Roshkowski took over Louis Cohen's COD store, but they're also up in Silver Plume and just about every place else. Let's see. Where are we?
We went to
Well,
Shop International.
nope. Oh, come on, you know this. You really do need this program. Library Park. Yeah.
Oh, Fairness.
No, this is Library Park. And those of you that had dinner at 511 tonight, that's right there. So not all of the merchants, not all of the dry goods merchants were Jewish, a lot of them were, but the place next door to Louis was run by Gray Warner. So these two gents, I would guess this is Mr. Cohen, and that this is the gentleman who worked with him, Mr. Green. But this is a sizable property. Across the street where Strauss Park is now. Can you hear this, or is it sounding really good? It's okay? All right. That feels odd for me, but no. But I don't want to.
You keep walking out of the camera.
My dad worked for Kodak. I was very good at getting out of camera shots. So this gentleman is in the middle. Oh, come on. In the middle here is Sam Strauss. He's standing in Strauss Park, which he didn't know at the time was going to be Strauss Park, and the store run by C.W. Pollard, who was just a friend. But that was Mr. Strauss. Oh, what else was I going to say? Remind myself to, yes. So our very first Devil's Gate program. Some of you may have, or Lou, you were probably there. Who else was there? Very first Devil's Gate program was in the back room of the Ram, back when the Ram had a back room. And it was on some of the different ethnic groups in town. And when I mentioned the fact that there were Jewish merchants, my friend Barb Levin put her hand up and said, were the Jewish residents required to live in a certain area? And I said, no, definitely not. They were very much a part of the community. But that was, we know more information now, but I still stick by that. They were indeed part of the community. You want a chair? There's 3 up here. It's kind of like church. You get here late, you gotta sit in the front. I also wanted to make sure, starting off, that you know I'm not an expert by any means on Jewish culture culture, traditions, history. A lot of you in the audience, or several of you, I know, will know a lot more than I do. But what I do know is who was here. So hopefully you'll come away tonight with more information on the broad spectrum. And if you want to go and do additional research, we'd be delighted to have you do that. You can come back and do one of these.
Christine, is this the same Strauss who lived in the house I'm living in? Wow.
Yes, I was going to say that.
Oh, were you?
Oh, yes. And
Okay,
the
great.
same Louis Cohen who lived in Nick and Wendy's house. So-
I didn't hear her question.
Oh, she was asking if it's the Strauss who lived at the corner of 3rd and Rose in the brick house. And yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's him. Okay. Yes, it says here, not an expert. That's the truth. Okay. But I wanted to start out giving you a little bit of information on the early merchants who are coming out here, and a lot of them come out as peddlers. And they come out first to Central City, hello Nevadaville, but give you a little information here. This is from a book called Pioneers, Peddlers, and a word I can't pronounce that I think is Zadahim.
Sadijin.
Thank you. I tried it a lot of different ways. I just wasn't sure. So, from that book, Alexander Rittmaster came from Suwałki, Poland. He was an escaped prisoner of the Crimean War. He's said to have settled in Central City in 1860. 7 years later, he was joined by a nephew, Abraham Rashkowskis. Like I say, we're going to find Rashkowskis a lot. Who escaped Suwałki when Russian Cossacks invaded his parents' home. Not a good thing. He arrived in New York the day after Lincoln's assassination. Apparently, Mrs. Rittmaster lived in New York instead of Central City. That makes sense. In 1860, where would you rather? So she stays in New York City, but she helps him, she teaches him one phrase, glass put in. So he could do some work putting glass in to at least make up enough money to start heading west. And he takes a train to Council Bluffs, it's as far as he could pay. Then he walks the rest of the way to Cheyenne.
Wow.
Yeah, these peddlers, if they had Fitbits, you know, it would be beyond the numbers. So he walks to Pueblo, works there for a little while. Then he walks to Central City, where he went to work for his uncle, who was Alexander Rittmaster. Then he starts acting as a peddler, and he has 2 huge canvas bags and 2 telescope grips filled with merchandise. He began peddling to the neighborhood camps all around here, including over on the other side of Guanella, where if it was too steep, he would just roll the packs down and follow them. You look like you've got a question.
No, I don't. I'm
Okay.
fine.
You can stop me. It's okay, I'm not an expert. So Rashkowski, who is the one who is then out peddling, really keeps his family in mind, and he starts sending for everybody. So he's bringing brothers, sister, nephews, nieces, and cousins. And his family then decided that he started the first chain store, because basically all the Rashkowskis had stores throughout, including here. So then Abraham Rashkowski brought where's my book? S-E-F-E-R. Sefer? S-E-F? Shofar, Torah? S-E-F-E-R? Anyway, a Torah. So Abraham Rashkowski brings a Torah to Central City, where he conducted Orthodox services. When his son was ready to be bar mitzvahed, he was sent back to New York for necessary preparation. The Rashkowskis joined the temple in Denver. Mary and her family were pious, observant Jews. The only concession she made to Western ways was the discarding of the wig worn by pious married women at the insistence of her daughter on the way over on the boat. But they attempted to continue the Orthodox tradition, as did a family of Kobeys, K-O-B-E-Y. Let's see. So Rajkowski was the one who would build the first bath in Central City, but before it was built, he would take a trip over to the mineral baths in Idaho Springs. These guys walked and walked. Makes you understand why he built the first bath in town too. So it was a 15-mile hike. They did attempt to bring kosher food out, but it generally arrived rotten, so they became vegetarians. I would guess, I would guess that once the train arrives, once food is more available in Denver, that they would probably go back, but for some time they were doing that. Okay. All right. And let's go here. So this is another thing that you won't be able to read. Oh, jeez.
I want to give you the high sign, Christine.
No, this is my own bright idea. I'm going to show these. You're not going to be able to read them, but I want you to know what they are. These are Sanborn fire maps. And if you've done research on buildings in the towns of Georgetown, Silver Plume, and Idaho Springs, these maps are wonderful. They're done by the insurance company, and they were mostly for insurance rates. So they wanted to know where the hydrants were, how many how many lines, how many feet of water lines, what the water pressure was, those kinds of things. But if you haven't ever used these, they're good fun. This one is Georgetown. Walk up here. And 6th Street, 6th and Rose is the real heart of the commercial district, of the dry goods stores and tailor shops and those in Georgetown. Silver Plume. Was it something I said? You can see better. I can see.
She can't read.
That's okay, I'll make it up. Oh, you can't see me as well either. Well, I wanted to tell you, when I started pulling this program together, a lot of programs are more traditional. You say, this is what I'm going to say, you say it, and at the end you say, this is what I've said. This program, I've told a couple of you, I'm reminded of the dog in the movie Up. Remember that dog? It walks around, squirrel! I have a few squirrel moments, and this is one of them. Because if you use these Sanborn maps, this is Idaho Springs, and you can see here, stop. Oh. These pink buildings are brick. And blue or stone. This is Silver Plume. So you know where you are. This is Olivia's, this is the town shop. This is where the tea room was. So you have those, but again, the commercial district's pretty tight together. But one of the things that these maps tell you, the population, so in 1890, the population for Georgetown, they included Silver Plume, was 4,000.
Wow.
Water facilities, filter box, 150 feet above the center of town. This is up on the way to today's water plant. Connected with a basin 65 feet in diameter by 7 feet deep, supplied by Clear Creek. Domestic pressure 60 pounds, may be increased to 180 pounds. This is before the penstock, so I don't know what they were doing, but somehow you have the sense if you went to 180 pounds, you blow out the hydrants. What do I know? The fire department, 4 companies, 40 men each, 4 hose carts, 1 hook and ladder truck, 1 hand engine, 500 feet of first-class hose. Silver Plume did not have waterworks in 1890, but they had 1 hand engine, 1 hose cart, 1,300 feet of first-class hose. The other fun thing they will tell you is the prevailing winds are south. No kidding. That didn't take a lot of expertise. For Idaho Springs in 1890, the population was 1,800. So at this point in time, population base is still very much the west end of the county. From 1890 on, it's gonna start switching, going like this. But 1800, Idaho Springs, no steam or hand engines, water facilities very good. It still is, they've always done that. 3 fire companies, 75 men, 3 hose carts, 1 hook and ladder truck, 1,500 feet of first-class hose. Waterworks, gravity, 2 reservoirs, combined capacity, 1,400,000 gallons. Wow. Anyway, so that's one of my squirrel moments here, but it's cool stuff. Okay, what do I have next? Idaho Springs. All right, so we're back to my friend Mr. Cohen here. Louis Cohen was first-generation immigrant from Poland. And, you know, I've never been one of those people saying, oh, I'd like to have lived 150 years ago, but I would love to have heard the voices on the streets, the number of first-generation immigrants and the accents that you would have heard. You'd hear German and Russian and Yiddish and Irish and everything else. So Mr. Cohen is first-generation immigrant from Poland. His wife is Lena Hyman. She was born in Germany. Their children, Charlie, Lily, and Isidore. Lily dies as a young girl, which has the town very upset. They lived for a while in Nick and Wendy's house. We all know that, as you know, up here at 2nd and Argentine. He did observe the holidays. In the newspaper, the Colorado Miner says, Wednesday last was a day of atonement for the Hebrew religion. Cohen, Schindberg, Tischler, Ben Sternfield, and others atone. Strauss has quit, however. He thinks there's nothing in it. I don't think that's quite true. I think that Strauss was a Reformed Jew and that the others were Orthodox. But I think he probably didn't want to close his store. So that was,
Christine, where was his store?
his store moves around.
Oh, okay.
These guys, it's going to be sort of, he ends up at the Silver Brick.
Okay.
Okay, so that
Okay,
building.
great.
But he's moving up and down
Yeah.
the street there and across the street. He ends up donating Strauss Park to the town, but he never has a store over there. I think, well, I'll get back
Christine, what's the date on this picture, ballpark?
to you. 1880. But you gotta love it. He sold carpets.
What does COD stand for?
Cash on delivery, I assume.
Okay.
He sold boots. Hopefully not that one. He sold coats. We're still back to the 500 dozen shirts that must be in here.
Chris, what's that address?
This address, this is Library Park. So this is 6th and Rose. So this is 511. This is now completely empty. And this is the library over here. But this is a wonderful picture. Sole agent for different handmade boots and shoes. These ladies over here, I would guess, might be milliners. The dry goods merchants tend to do some of everything. Okay.
What does the COD stand for?
With the cash on delivery is like today, if you get something COD.
Okay.
But I think it was just
In other words, no credit.
no credit.
Right.
Louis
Hard cap.
Louis stays in Georgetown until the early 1890s. His wife is having trouble with the altitude, so they move down to Denver, and he starts a store on Larimer Street called the Beehive, pretty much in the area of Larimer Square.
Chris, I have a question about that power pole. Is that PC or AC?
So this may be a little later than, I think it's, I don't know.
Well, it's later than 1880.
Yeah, it could be more 1890, but he's gone. So if we get into early 1890, then this is probably Mr. Oshkovsky instead of Mr. Cohen. It still has his name on the store, so. Like I said, to begin with, I'm not an expert, I know something. That's why I'm doing this. Fairmont with his little girl, Lily, was buried out there first, and other members of the family.
Christine, are you able to read your papers?
Yeah.
Do you need a light on?
Nah.
Okay.
You can see it. So then we'll move on to Sam Strauss. Sam Strauss was also Solomon Samuel Strauss, but he used the name Sam here. He gets here early and goes into business with another gentleman named Sprague, and they run the New York store. Again, it's over, moving up and down and around on that block between 5th and 6th Street on Rose. He doesn't say anything about 500 dozen shirts, but corner of Alpine Rose Streets. So he could be right across the street. I think he's a little further back. If you've seen this picture before, this is the parade. There's a series of these photos. Oh, stop it. Come back. Wait. Okay. There are 3 buttons. You'd think I could hit the right one. Here on this, on each corner here, it says Strauss. So this is the Strauss store float in the 4th of July parade. 1890s. And behind them we've got the Society Umberto. The Italians are back here. Oh, stop, jeez, wrong button. These guys. This is Sam Strauss, his son Howard, and Emil, and then he also had a daughter, Lena. He was born in Germany. Her wife was Flora Morgenthau. She was born in Ohio to German parents, and their children were Howard, Lena, and Emil. Bella Morgenthau, who would have been a daughter of Flora's sister, lived with them, Flora's brother. And they stayed in business here until about 1911, 1912. 1912, they're very concerned about the passing of our largest dry goods store, Strauss & Sons. They say Mr. Strauss Sr. came to the United States from Bavaria in 1869, landed in Georgetown December of that year, and began as a clerk for the dry goods store of L. Trapp. In 1870, became associated with Mr. Sprague and operated a store under the name Strauss & Sprague. Mr. Strauss soon after acquired his partner's interest, enlarged the business under the heading of the New York store. And the building now occupied by Mr. Tong. Well, that's helpful. Where was Mr. Tong's building? I don't know.
Look at how they only button the first button. All of them.
Yeah.
Must have been the style of it.
The style, yeah.
First, I think the second button.
Yeah, they had to check.
This is Sam Strauss. I don't know what the group is. Here's Mr. Strauss here. And this is our friend Morris Tischler. I'll tell you a little bit more about him
Mustache.
in a bit. Yes. And again, the single button.
Where did you find all these photos related to the Strausses?
There was a gentleman named Louis Keck, K-E-C-K, who took a lot of photographs, and those photos went to the collection of Earl Ellis and his wife, and they left them at the Shop International to give to me.
Yay.
So now they are part of the library collection. I didn't tell you, by the way, part of introducing. These days I am working 15 to 20 hours a week at the old school as the library archivist, research librarian, along with my friend Sean Bent. And thank you to the library for the use of their equipment, because it just makes it a lot easier. This is my own little gizmo, and you'd think I know how to use it, but there are only 3 buttons. They're up and down. Anyway. But yes, it's a good collection, and to have this number of really clear photos of the family is quite nice. This is Howard Strauss, the son, in the Hotel de Paris.
Chris, I'd like to add that most of that furniture that you see, as well as most of the books, and most of the prints are still there. So if you haven't gone to the
Yes.
hotel, you really need to stop in and.
You need to do it. Yeah.
Well, where is Howard? That's his office?
No, Howard's just visiting the hotel, I assume.
Oh, here he is.
Yeah, oh, where is he?
Oh,
He's over here.
the name is on.
Oh, yeah, put the name on the chair. He's very small. He's a little guy. Hello, Howard. He's so pretty. Oh, Chris, it's not getting better from here. Okay. Off you go. I don't need to know that. Hundreds of old customers will greatly miss the old business place, and they did, really. That was a big store to leave from downtown. His son Howard continued the business but moved to California, and Mr. Strauss went back to New York where he dies. He's buried in a Jewish cemetery, so like I say, the fact that they said he didn't think it was worth it, I think they overstated that. But he did leave the property that becomes Strauss Park. Now, this is the parking lot portion of Strauss Park.
Yeah.
He donated the land to the town with the understanding that it would become a park. Parking, park. Anyway. Car park. Okay, oh right, it's going to Mr. Tischler. So Morris Tischler was a tailor and did cleaned clothes. He apparently used ammonia to clean the clothes. A little tough. And there was one time where apparently Mr. Fish left Limburger cheese in the pocket and it did not go well. So they wrote an article. I don't know what the 40 Liars Club was, but
Was he lying when he said he stayed?
no, I don't think so. So what this says, he puts this ad in the paper. The philosopher and president of the 40 Liars Club says he will stay with Georgetown, even with 3 political parties. The third party at that time would have been the Silver Republicans. Even with 3 political parties. His business everybody knows. In connection with this, he has opened a wholesale and retail cigar and tobacco store. Politically, socially, or otherwise, call on Morris Tischler. Thank you, right? He has a tailor business, he moves down to Denver, and then he comes back. How could they have made a distant developer? This is his daughter, Fanny, up here. And she belonged to a group called the Sardines, alternately called the Sardines or the Jolly Sardines. And there was a boys group at the time called the Lemons. No. But they were. But the thing that interests me about this picture and the others as well, these are people who are part of the community. This isn't a Jewish club, this isn't anything. This is just, these are children of the same age who are here, and here they are. This is another picture of the Sardines. I love the way they're dressed up, and this is Lena Strauss over here. Fanny Tischler isn't in this one. Okay, so now we're going to go up to Silver Plume. Silver Plume had branch stores. Sam Strauss had a branch store in Plume, so did Louis Cohen. These stores are mostly going to be from Silver Street down to Big Town Hall. I think Louis Cohen was mostly in the building that's now the former town shop, and that Sam Strauss's store up there was run by his son-in-law, Eugene Morgenthau. And I think that's where Olivia is living now. And then there was the Hefner family. What else have I got here? Oh, another Rashkowski. This is Mr. D.L. Rashkowski of the COD store in Georgetown, and he's going back to get supplies in New York. Boots, shoes, etc. Come on. And the Silver Plume Dry Goods Clothing Company, successors to J.L. Rashkowski, by D. Hefner, secretary. stock is complete and online. And our aim, I thought that was I couldn't figure out what we were doing. Please, spring goods. Mr. Rosenberg had choice wines, liquors, and cigars in Silver Plume, and I'm assuming also that he was a Jewish merchant.
Where is their web address?
www.
Dumb question, dumb question.
There was also a Mr. Zamansky, Barney Zamansky, who had a business in Chihuahua, which the local newspaper was careful to say should be pronounced Chihuahua. So Mr. Barry Zamansky had a business in Silver Plume as well, the firm of Zamansky and Stern. And there's Mr. Stern. And there's Moritz Newman. We have Mr. Newman here. Come on. I'm not sure if Mr. Newman is Jewish or not. His brother works for Sam Strauss, and he's born in Germany. I think there's a good chance. And this store would be where Gary and Joni live now, the corner of Silver and Main. All right, now we're on to Idaho Springs. We have Jacob Bloom, and I don't have a lot of information on Mr. Bloom. When I first decided to do this program, I was going to do Jewish merchants of Georgetown and Silver Plume, because that's where I've done most of my research. And so that's easier. The library has now sponsored the digitization of newspapers county-wide, which is wonderful. So we have Idaho Springs newspapers that are digitized. But the earliest Idaho Springs newspaper is 1882. So there's a lot of information on Idaho Springs in the early Georgetown papers starting in 1867, but not as detailed. So I was unable to find ads or other things for Idaho Springs before that time. But we've got Mr. Bloom next door to the post office. Okay, if we find the post office, we'll find that. And Jacob Weinberger. Now the Weinbergers are sort of the equivalent of the Roshkowskis. There are a lot. There was Nathan, who was the father, Clara, a daughter, 23, Luella, 22, Samuel, 21, Alex, 18, Bella, 14, and Herman, 13. This is from the 1900 census. His wife, Agnes, died the year before, probably from sheer exhaustion. Nathan Weinberger was a charter member of the Idaho Springs Masonic Lodge, so I'm glad you're here. Danny, I was going to tell you that, which was organized in 1874. His son Alex would later become a master mason and was made worshipful master in 1913. So then, I've got a lot. You need to know all of this. So this sun goes here, that sun goes there, this daughter goes there. Okay. But we have, this was, you can read this, right? I could barely read it as I printed, but this is where I had, this information on census records, if you are doing genealogy, there's a lot of it that's now available online. So you can go out and search by name and address and find the information. This is where all of the Weinbergers are, this whole chunk right here. Indicates that he rented. He lived on Colorado Boulevard, but he rented. And that's the other thing. A lot of these merchants are renting instead of owning property, which makes it a little harder to trace. But there he is. This gent, who was also a Weinberger. This is Saul Weinberger. And he runs a bar and liquor establishment in Idaho Springs. And I just dumped my papers. That's special. You gotta love the look on his face. Really, you're taking my picture? This is my predecessor.
Those swinging doors look like the ones in the gold one.
And they go, yeah. So now, all right, I'm gonna jump up a little further here. things that happen. In 1914, Idaho Springs is in a really good location for day trips. It makes Georgetown pretty bad at the time, by the way, because once you have cars, people are taking a day trip and they're coming to Idaho Springs. They're not coming all the way up here. But one of the trips that they had, 1914, they say big doings tomorrow. Tomorrow the Jewish Benevolent Fraternal Orders will come here to hold their picnic. The orders known as the IOBS, IOBA, number 6 lodges. Up to a week ago, it was stated that 1,100 tickets had been engaged. And they're figuring between 1,500 and 1,800 persons come up to spend the day. First train will leave Denver at 7:30, and they spent the whole day in Idaho Springs. The event happened, and apparently they had a wonderful time, so the papers tell us.
Would you happen to know when the highway was paved up to Georgetown? Okay, never mind, it's all right.
It's constantly changing. So
Okay.
as you got US 6, then you have, so I'm really not sure.
Okay.
I would guess paving in the 50s, but I'm not sure. I made that up.
Okay.
This picture, I'm going to get out of the shot here because you have to see it. This is a group called the Unitonian Club. This is a Jewish, just a group, a social group. And if you can see those hats, I don't know, did they wear them? They're here in Denver, they're getting ready to come up to Idaho Springs, June of 1917. But they're wonderful. Why do the ladies have parasols and why are the men wearing silly hats? I do not know. They're not part of the 1,100 to 1,500 people who came up a different time that I know of, but those are the Unitonians. Okay. Then, kind of to bring us up more to the present, I mentioned the Kobe's earlier in Central City, and Isaac Schwader marries one of the Kobe family, Rachel, and Isaac's children would go on to form the Samsonite Luggage Corporation. They did okay. Their son Maurice died in 1948. His widow Ruth donated his fishing cabin and 242 acres of land up Chicago Creek below Echo Lake. And they donated it to Congregation Emmanuel. Congregation Emmanuel established the Morris B. Schwader Camp, which continues to be operated to this day. So there is still a bit of a lasting legacy with that. There's a lot more information available out there. I did most of my research using newspapers and photos that had come our way and other things. DU has a collection of Judaic studies, which I think will probably have more information and more photos. Anyone who wants to do more work, please do. On this or other topics. If you want me ever to give you my research notes, you're welcome to them. So anyway, that's what I have, and I think we're probably, yeah, that's fine. Oh, yeah. Hey.
So what do you say? Spell Kobe.
Kobey. I think they were Kobeski. The book Pioneers, Peddlers, and thank you. Thanks, Mom. Said that a lot of the Polish immigrants kind of got fed up with the SKI because they weren't really thrilled with what was going on in Poland, so they attempted to anglicize the names a little more. So they did that.
Christine,
Yes.
there were Colbys living in Aspen before I was there.
Okay.
But I thought somewhere along the line, they were in the potato chip business. Does that make any sense?
I don't know. They didn't come up, they were in Central City and then down in Denver.
Right.
But I could certainly see where they would be someplace else as well, but I don't know that. One of the other
And I
things,
think they left Aspen and went to Denver.
one of the things that's difficult about researching a project like this is figuring out who's Jewish. This is a point in time where people are using biblical names a lot. You remember that Abraham Lincoln guy? Yeah. So it was was difficult, so in order to figure it out, I needed to find, thank you, I needed to have the local newspaper say something like, here are the people who own the stores that are closing for Rosh Hashanah. Weddings, if the wedding was done by a rabbi, good hint, and others, but there's still a lot more to be known. I have no idea the number of Jewish residents that were here. There was not a temple. The closest temple was Denver. Orthodox services were done by Mr. Roshkowski in Central City, but these folks would periodically go down to Denver for services.
Was there a synagogue here?
Closest one, Denver. Anybody else? Have you learned things?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, can I turn this off? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.